My name is Charles Logan Floyd Jr. I'm a son to Charles Logan Floyd Sr. My mother's Pam Floyd, and that's my sister Rainey Brianne Floyd. I'm from Rockdale, Texas. Lived here most of my life. I currently reside in Arlington, Texas. It's wedged between Fort Worth and Dallas. I work for Encore Distribution Transmission Company as a network technician. And I went to this church a long time ago, but I come quite often, so it's not like I'm not here much. So, but I was raised in a Christian home and around Christian people, and I got to see all kind of different flavors of all walks of life. And my daddy decided that he would like me to teach this Sunday. He even picked my topic, which this is kind of strange, but he let me know what he wanted to hear. It's going to be kind of, basically this is going to be just a history of the Jews from Abraham till 1973. And I'm going to cover a lot of stuff, but I'm going to generalize a lot of it too, because there's a lot of details that I didn't quite get in here. But I'm going to try to give you the high points and the major points of what's going on. So, all right, so he already stole several of my scriptures, which thank you. I appreciate your help. It's good to have you here. So we're going to start with Abraham, and hopefully most people already know who Abraham is, if you know the one true God, because our covenant stems from the beginning with Abraham. We're going to go to Genesis 12:3, which he already read. I probably don't really need to read it again, and it's all in our hearts anyways, but I'm just going to I guess I'll run through it just real quick, kind of, because there is a major point in here, which actually he already brought up. But Genesis 12:3, and I guess I'll go ahead and start at 12:1. Now the Lord said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kinsmen and from thy father's house into a land that I will show thee. And I will make thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great. And thou shalt be a blessing, and I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse thee, and in thee all the families of the earth will be blessed. And that's, he already brought up that fact, but God wants to bless all the families of the earth. Even though he picked Abraham out specifically, he's going to use Abraham and this wonderful family he's about to give him. This promise he just gave him right here. He's going to bless the earth. And that blessing is God. It's just very simply, God himself is going to bless the world with himself. It's really just that simple. Nothing too technical. It's just, God, awesomeness of God. That's what we all want, right? I hope so. Because if you don't, then you can be very disappointed with this. So I'm going to move on to 17. Genesis 17. And this is right now, I'm just lining out what God's doing. God picked out a man, told him to go somewhere, and gave him a bunch of promises. And the key promise being he's going to bless the world through Abraham and through God himself. So Genesis 17, and I'm going to go ahead and start at 7. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee in the generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be God unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. And I will give thee and thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. So I'm just establishing God chose Abraham and even gave him an area, a spot, Canaan, a land that is his. They've given from God to Abraham. So now he's got lots of promises. So and one being the key here is there's actually a land, a spot on this earth that is promised to him. And then I'm going to jump to we'll go back a little bit. We'll go back to 15. And this is just a small thing, which I think everybody probably knows. But just in case everybody forgot, where am I going to start? I guess I'll just start in 51, because I think it's pretty good. After these things, the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abraham. I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said, Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless? And thy steward of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, Behold to me, thou hast given no seed, lo, and one born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto them, so shall thy seed be. And he believed the Lord, and he counted to him for righteousness. So Abraham believed God. And that's virtually just a great description of our covenant right now through Jesus Christ. You believe God, you're righteous. It's just real simple. No technical details here. If you trust and believe God, God says you're righteous, and you're his son, you're his heir, and you get to be a part of this covenant through Abraham. So now I want to follow out the seed of Abraham. And we all know that Abraham kind of hearkened unto his wife's ear, and he had a son named Ishmael. But this was not the seed of a promise, because God did promise him a son. You just read it right there. And that seed was, of course, Isaac. So Isaac is actually where the promise is going to flow through. Now, if I don't know if everyone probably remembers Sarah died, does she not? Yes, and she's buried in Hebron. And he married another woman named Keturah, and he had 5 children: Zimran, Joshak, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. So he had more offspring. Abraham had several children, but there was only one child that was a promise. That was Isaac. Now these other children he sent away with gifts, but because Isaac is the seed, God sticks with him to fulfill the promise. So now we're going to move on to Isaac, and Isaac had 2 children, right? Esau and Jacob. I'm not really reading these things. I feel like, in general, there's a lot of Christians here. We probably know some of these stories just in general, because I'm trying to get through at least near the 18th century, and we're way before that. So Esau and Jacob, we all kind of know what happens in Esau and Jacob, right? In general. Well, Jacob being the younger, he steals his brother's birthright, right? And technically the seed would go to Esau because he is the elder. Well, Jacob tricks him out of it, and he has to run away, and he goes and gets 2 wives. He really just wanted one, but he got 2. So, and he has 12 boys and 1 girl. And the promise goes to these 12 boys. And right now, this is all happening in general in the land of Canaan. Well, through his children, Joseph being, I guess, sort of the instigator of this somewhat, they get enslaved in Egypt. Now I'm jumping way ahead. So the family of Abraham is now enslaved in Egypt right now. His 12 sons, and hopefully we all know 12 names. Not that they're really important at this moment in time. But for 430 years, which I guess I should probably read that. Let's go skip forward to Exodus. Exodus 12. I'll read 12:40. Now, the sojourning of the children of Israel dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. So, pretty much they haven't been in Canaan for a long time. The very land God gave them, they've been, 4 centuries away? I mean, out of it. But here's a promise. God still wants a people, and God still wants to use them. God still wants what he wants. So he's going to take them out of Egypt through Moses. Now, through Moses, we go through maybe I should read that part now. Okay, let's go to Exodus 6. Let's read that real quick. Exodus 6. And we will read. I want to start at 6:1. Then the Lord said unto Moses, now shalt thou see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand shall he let them go, and with a strong hand shall he drive them out of his land. And God spake unto Moses and said unto him, I am the Lord, and I separated unto Abraham, unto Isaac, unto Jacob, by the name of God Almighty. But by my name, Jehovah, I was not known to them. And I have also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their pilgrimage, wherein they were strangers. And I have also heard the groaning of the children of Israel, whom the Egyptians keep in bondage, and I have remembered my covenant. And I'm going to stop right there. Pretty much the general idea is he's taking them out. I think everybody knows the story of Moses. We go through, they leave Egypt, they go to the Red Sea. They come out of the Red Sea. God protects them with fire by night, a cloud by day. He feeds them. He takes care of them. But let's go ahead and, since we're talking about the Hebrew people, we'll go ahead and learn a few lessons that they, actually, let's go to Exodus 19 before I jump to that. And this is what God wanted for his people. He took them out of death in Egypt. He brought them through, baptized them, gave them the Spirit, fed them, now he wants to tell them what the point of this is, what he's trying to do here. And we'll go to Exodus 19, and I'm going to read starting at 1. In the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day they came to the wilderness of Sinai. For they were departed from Rephidim and were come to the desert of Sinai, and pitched in the wilderness. There Israel encamped before the mount. And Moses went up to God, and the Lord called him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the children of Jacob, Tell the children of Israel, Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you in eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, and an holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. So he's telling them what he wants. He wants a holy nation. He wants something that's his, something that's special. That's why he's building this from Abraham to this moment right now. He wants something. It's very important. So now let's learn something from the Hebrew people. So we're going to go to the New Testament now. And I'm going to start in 1 Corinthians, if I can find it. 1 Corinthians 10. Most likely all of you know all this. It's just a small reminder of what the Hebrew people, how they acted and what happened to them. It's kind of a small description of this. And I'll just start in 10:1, in 1 Corinthians 10:1. Moreover, brethren, I would not that you should be ignorant, how that all your fathers were under the cloud and passed through the sea, and were all baptized under Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and did all eat the same spiritual meat, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. But with many of them God was not well pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now these things were for your examples, to the intent that we should not lust after evil things, as they also lusted. Neither be ye idolaters, as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Neither let us commit fornication, as some of them committed, and fell in one day 320,000. Neither let us tempt Christ, as some of them tempted, and were destroyed of serpents. Neither murmur ye, as some of them also murmured, and were destroyed of the destroyer. Now all these things happened unto them for our examples. And they are written for our admonition, so we should learn from this, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Wherefore let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall. So the whole description of the Hebrew children from Egypt all the way up to, we'll just say right before when Joshua takes them into the promised land, is an admonition for us how to walk as Christians. And if you really don't know how they acted and you want to compare how you act compared to how they act, it'd be really good to read this chapter several times and see if the Spirit convicts you or anything like that. So this is just in general. I just want to show that God is doing something with his people, and sometimes God's people fight him terribly, and sometimes he becomes very disappointed in them. So, and we'll go all the way to Hebrews 3 now. 3. And I'm going to start reading in 16. Hebrews 3:16. For some, when they had heard, did provoke, howbeit not all came out of Egypt by Moses. But with whom was he grieved 40 years? So they wandered through the wilderness for 40 years because God was going to kill off everybody below the age of 20 before they went into the wilderness. Was it not with them that had sinned, whose carcasses fell in the wilderness, and to whom swear that they should not enter into the rest, but to them that believed not? So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief. So now the Hebrew people went from Egypt, the Red Sea, they're in the wilderness, and God's going to take out those who, because of unbelief, they literally, even though they saw all this awesome Spirit, they saw the Spirit in physical form in a cloud and fire. They saw God punish them. They still didn't believe. Even though pretty much God was, in a way, dragging them on, taking them someplace, they didn't believe him. They really, it blows my mind to think that could ever happen, but obviously we should learn from this and apply that in our lives. So, all right, so now we've got the Hebrew people. They wandered the 40 years in the wilderness, and now they're going into the promised land. They're going back home to Canaan. So they crossed the Jordan, and Joshua was leading them. So I think this is where I start skipping a lot. So we got Canaan, and we had the judges. So with the judges, they get tired of the judges. They want a king, so they hire King Saul. And then we have a long period of time of kings. And let's see, right after Solomon, the kingdom split into Israel and Judah. And of course, most time Israel is under Assyrian rule, but we're going to go ahead and skip to follow the southern rule, which maybe I should explain that. The kingdom of Israel was one, but then it became two. And the northern part was called Israel, and the southern part was Judah. And the northern part was far eviler than the southern part. So pretty much the line of David, the kings in the south that lived in Jerusalem, they were good, they were bad, they were good, they were bad, to the point where God just got very sick and tired under Jehoiakim. At 597, we had the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar come, and he subjugates the Israeli people. And pretty much, this is a start of a period of where Israel is no longer free. They are always under someone else. So, but there actually still is a city called Jerusalem after Nebuchadnezzar leaves. But before Nebuchadnezzar leaves, he takes one of the cousins or nephew, Zedekiah, and makes him king of Jerusalem, king of Israel. But he's a client king, as the Romans would call it. All his power flows through Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. So, well, Zedekiah is a bad king, and this makes Nebuchadnezzar come back and completely wipe out the city of Jerusalem. Flatten it, take out the Solomon's temple, the walls, everything. 586 BC. So the Jews are dispersed pretty much, dragged into Babylon and made slaves. Well, very soon after that, we have the Persian Empire. We have Cyrus. And Cyrus decides, God tells him to rebuild the temple. So he sends Zerubbabel back. And as around 535, we actually have a temple again, and we have walls again in Jerusalem. So we actually have a place for the Jews again, a place of Israel, a place in Canaan that God promised the Jews. There's a spot for them again after Zerubbabel. And then in 516, it's actually completed. So here now we have this long period of time. We go from Babylonian, we go to Persian, we go to Greek, and then after the Greek part, we actually have another independent Jewish kingdom, because the Hasmonean period. And that's where the Jews throw off the Greek, or they're specifically the Seleucid Empire, freed themselves, and they actually had a kingdom again, a kingdom free to rule themselves. And this doesn't last very long, about 100 years, and that's when Pompey the Great came and made Herod the king. When they set him up, it made it a part of the Roman Empire pretty much. And I'm trying to rush through all this because I'm trying to get to Jesus. So then we get Jesus, and I was going to read that, wasn't I? So here's the promise. Jesus comes into the picture. And God has been very disappointed in the Jews thus far. I guess I'll go ahead and read. Let's go ahead and go to Malachi. We'll go ahead and read about how God feels about his people during this time period, right at the very end. And I'm going to read in Malachi, where? 1? We'll start in 6. Malachi 1:6, Malachi 1:6. It says, "A son honoreth his father, and a servant his master. If then I be a father," and this is God speaking, "where is mine honor? And if I be a master, where is my fear? Saith the Lord of hosts unto you, O priests that despise my name. And ye say, wherein have we despised thy name? Ye offer polluted bread upon mine altar. And ye say, wherein have we polluted thee? And that we say, the table of the Lord is contemptible. And if ye offer the blind for the sacrifice, is it not evil? And if ye offer the lame and the sick, is it not evil? Offer it now unto thy governor. Will he be pleased with it? Or accept thy person, saith the Lord of hosts? And now I pray you, beseech God that he will be gracious unto you. This hath been by your means. Will he regard your person, saith the Lord of hosts? Who is there even among you that would shut the doors for naught? Now, he's actually asking them, who will go and shut the temple doors, because these people are so faithless and so vile to me right now. And this is his people that he's promised something to. He wants somebody to go shut the doors of the temple. Neither do ye kindle fire on mine altar for naught. I have no pleasure with you, saith the Lord of hosts, neither will I accept your offering in your hand. For from the rising of the sun unto the going down the same, my name shall be great among the Gentiles. And in every place incense shall be offered unto my name, and a pure offering for my name shall be great unto the heathen. So God has been thoroughly displeased with his people. This is pretty much the end of the Old Testament. God has such anger towards his people for their faithlessness, even though he gave them so much that he would hopes that they would love him back and treat his sacrifices and treat his laws as something worthy of himself. But they treat it like a business. They treat it just something they have to do, something they have to complete. They make it humdrum. It becomes to the point where God just wants them to stop. And that's pretty much where we get. I'm going to go ahead and talk about Jesus. We might as well. Let's talk about Romans. Let's go to Romans 9. So he sent them their hope. He sent them the seed that he's going to bless the whole world with. Romans 9. And I'll start in 9:1. I say the truth in Christ, I lie not, my conscience also bearing witness in the Holy Ghost, that I have a great heaviness and continual sorrow from my heart. For I would wish that myself were accursed from Christ for my brethren, my kinsmen, according to the flesh, who are the Israelites. So Paul is talking about his people. Right there, he's saying, I'm also a Jew, and I feel for my people, who are the Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoption unto the glory and the covenants and the giving of the law and the service of God and the promises. So God gave them everything. They understand where God is coming from. They understand things. Who are the fathers, of whom concerning the flesh Christ came. So Christ came for them, who is over all God, blessed forever. Amen. Not as though the word of God hath taken none effect, for they are not all Israel which are of Israel. Neither because they are the seed of Abraham are they the children. So they like to think that because they can trace their way all the way back to Abraham, that they're saved, that they're fine, that they have hope. But he's saying it's not that anymore. It shifted because of Jesus. And they are all the children. Let's go ahead and get 8. That is, they that which are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of God, speaking of the Jews. They are the fleshly generational relatives of Abraham. But the children of the promise are counted for the seed, and seed being Christ. For this is the word of promise. At this time will I come, and Sarah shall have a son. And not only this, but when Rebekah also had conceived by one, even by our father Isaac, for the children being not yet born, neither having done good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth. It was said unto her, the elder should serve the younger. It is written, Jacob have I loved, and Esau have I hated. What shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness of God? God forbid. For he saith to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. So then is not him that willeth, or nor him that runneth, but of God that showeth mercy. For the scripture saith unto Pharaoh, even for this same purpose have I raised thee up, that I might show my power in thee, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. Therefore hath the mercy on whom he will have mercy, and on whom he hardeneth. Thou wilt say then, why doth he find fault? Nay, I think I want to skip to the end real quick. I'm going to skip to the end right here. I'm going to go to 30. And it says, what shall we say then? That the Gentiles which followed not after righteousness have attained unto righteousness, even the righteousness which is of faith. But Israel which followed after the law of righteousness hath attained the law of righteousness. Wherefore? Because they sought it not by faith, but as it were by the works of the law. For they stumbled at the stumbling stone. And of course, the stumbling stone is Jesus. Jesus came, and they rejected him. They just couldn't see how this could be the Messiah. He didn't look the right. He didn't talk the part. So they rejected him. They stumbled at that stumbling stone. And Jesus then prophesied about the destruction of the temple. And he was even more or less talking about his body. But it was also the temple of Jerusalem. So we have a temple right now in Jerusalem around AD 30. So we're going to move a little forward to AD 70. Where we have, you see my water? Yeah, you have that water. In AD 70, we all know somewhat of it happens. We have the destruction of Jerusalem and by the Romans. And the reason is because the Jews decided to riot And then the Romans sent an army, and they destroyed everything in Jerusalem. And me and my dad went to Israel. And if you go to Jerusalem right now and you want to see where King David's buried, you can go there. You can go to, there's a Church of Dormition where the Last Supper was. You can go there too. But all this is conjecture. They have no idea where anything is, because when the Romans destroyed that place, it almost changed the environment. Everything got moved and shifted. Everything was destroyed, wiped off. It's almost like God wiped it all clean and said, we're starting over. So this place is wiped. I mean, if you go there now, you can go see these places, but they don't really know if that's the right place. They just think it was because somebody decided it. But this place is literally purified by God. So let's see, then about 130 years later, there is no Jerusalem, but 130 years, the town is rebuilt by Hadrian, and it's renamed Aelia Capitolina, but the Jews aren't allowed to enter the city or to live there. And during this time period, the Jews, of course, I guess I should have talked about it. After the destruction of Jerusalem, the Jews are scattered in the wind. They're just scattered all through Europe, Asia, Africa, everywhere. God just wipes them out of the land of Canaan that he promised them and pushes them everywhere. So we have a rebuilt city called the Aelia Capitolina. And then later on, what happens to the Roman Empire? It becomes Christianized under Constantine and Licinius, under the Edict of Milan. So the Roman Empire becomes Christianized, but guess what? The Jews are still not allowed back in Israel. It wouldn't be for another 400 years after that, when finally the Arabs take over the land of Palestine, that Jews are let back into Israel. Now there is a town, but there is no temple anymore. The temple is gone. There's Mount Moriah is where the temple was, but there's nothing there. So 400 years, we have no Jews, but then we get Jews back when the Arabs come back, and the Arabs take over. So then we have the Crusades, and I'm trying to rush it a little bit here. Then we have the Crusades, and it's funny, the Jews that live under the Arab rule fight with the Arabs against the Christians that come from Europe. So again, we have a European-dominated Palestine, but then very soon the Arabs get it back, and we have what is kind of a time of tolerance. They allow Jews to live there. They allow them to worship. They even allow Christians to come live in Israel. It's not a problem. Arabs really don't have a lot of problem with that. And then we're going to move forward. So we have Jews dispersed all through Europe, and everywhere they go, they are persecuted. Edward I, he ran them out of England at one time, in Gaul or France. They were actually run out. Spain, Germany. And this is all through the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th century. Everywhere the Jews go, they're always very much second-class citizens. Even though everywhere they go, they're very successful. It's funny. They don't have Jesus, but they apply the laws of God, and they're successful. They can have success everywhere they go financially, work hard, and they stick together very well. But eventually, at some point, wherever the local government, if it's Russia or Poland, they get very jealous of this, and they always start passing laws to start pushing them down a little bit, start running them off so they can get some of that money back in their system. So we have constant persecution during this time period. We have a little bit of immigration back to Israel. A few Jews start going back because they get tired of persecution. So hit some of the high points. So as the Jews are trickling back through time, one of the big things that happens is Alexander II in Russia actually institutes pogroms. And these pogroms are actually sort of like holidays in Russia where they go out, they find where the Jews live, they take their stuff, they murder a few. What they're trying to do is intimidate them. And this allows a lot of flood starting to go back to Israel. Lots of Jews start heading back during this time. And then we'll start right before World War I. We have the Ottoman Turks. They own Israel. And then we have, in 1914, we have World War I. Well, during World War I, the British run the Ottoman Turks out, and we're under the British Empire in Israel. All right, so under the British Empire, Arabs and Jews both live in Jerusalem or Israel. Now, there's about 2 million Arabs to probably about a couple 100,000 Jews. So definitely the Arabs are the majority. And they both they get along somewhat. I mean, the Arabs notice the Jews are coming back, but it's okay because they really, really hate the British. They hate them so much. And in a way, they kind of are tied together because the Arab and the Jew don't like the British that much. So they kind of forget about each other for a little while. They kind of are at peace because they want the British out. Well, the British make a mistake. They promise the Jews a state. And I rush a little bit. We have the infamous World War II. And this really forces Jews everywhere in Europe to go, we're not really wanted here. And everything they had before is gone anyways. So they decide, let's immigrate. Let's go back home. Let's go to a place that we can call our own and protect our own and claim it as our own. Amen. So they start going home, especially after World War II. 6 million Jews died in Germany. Well, the British see this as trouble. I mean, this is causing them so much pain with the Arabs because they get along with the Arabs fine, but then they have all these other immigrants coming in, and they come in and they're very successful. They set up schools, they set up towns, and the British don't know what to do. And then, like I said, the British, under the Balfour Declaration, promise the Jews a state because World War II happened and they were very much discomforted by this. Well, then there's an ambassador in Egypt that promises the Palestinians, the local Arabs in Israel, a state. So the British just made two promises they can't keep. So they decide, let's just make this a world problem. So they go to the United Nations. So in 1947, November 29th, there's a vote to divide up the land of Israel. Or as they call it then, it's not Israel then, it's Palestine. To divide up Palestine and for the minority Jew and for the majority Arab. Well, the Jews think this is great. Yeah, we're about to vote in a homeland for us. This is great. So they put all kind of pressure on different countries to the few that really don't stand with them. Well, the vote passes. And this pretty much marks the day when the Arab decides, oh, we hate the Jew and we want to kill them. Because they see this as some sort of Western imperialism trying to push off people like that we don't want in Europe. We're going to push them into this land that's already dominated by a people, the Arab. And they just see this as, you're just giving us what you don't want. You're pretty much putting an army on our shores, and we don't like that. And 1948, we have the War for Independence, as the Jews like to refer to it as, and they fight with the Arab. And the Arabs do attack them first. And you got to think about it, these Jews, most of these Jews just went through World War II, and they were in concentration camps. These are not battle-hardened, soldiers, living in Israel right now, ready to, fight. But they are willing to fight. Men and women willing to fight, and they're willing to die. And during this time period of 1948, it's funny because when the immigrants were coming from Europe, a lot of them would get caught by the British because they were trying to sneak in the country anyways. The British would put them in prison camps in Cyprus or Egypt to stop the immigration. Well, after the British said, we're done, they let all the prisoners go. So during this war, pretty much these Jews went from a concentration camp, got on a boat, went into British prison, got to Israel, and died the very next day on a land they spent 24 hours on. They were so committed to having a place that was their home, a place they could defend, a place where they could not be persecuted, even though really that's kind of where they were going, straight to persecution because of the Arabs. But you got to remember, the Arabs have been there for 700 years. They've dominated the land of Palestine, and there really has not been a majority Jew there. So they feel like this is ours. This is ours. And then we have these people from Europe coming in here trying to take over. They did not like this at all. So the War of Independence, I really can't remember how long it lasted necessarily, but the Jews come out on top. Finally, Russia, America, France, England get a UN ceasefire to stop the killing. And when they do that, well, the Israelis own a lot of the country, but they didn't get the one thing they wanted, which was Jerusalem. They're stuck. They attacked it a couple times, but I guess I should explain a little bit more. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The Jews are fighting the Lebanese, the Syrians, or Jordanians, the Egyptians. Now that's their four neighbors, but you have Iraq sending soldiers, you have Morocco, you have Libya. Saudi Arabia funded most of the war. I mean, they're not exactly that close. They sent soldiers, but they're fighting countries that have standing armies that have been fighting for years. And if you look at Jordan, they had the Arab Legion. all of their officers were British fighting the Jews. And these were trained armies, trained to kill. And they couldn't kill this minority people in Israel.
Oh God.
And the point of this is, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense how these immigrants from another country, not well funded, not funded like the Arabs were, not well equipped or well trained like the Arabs were, they have nothing but success. And a lot of it is through sheer luck, sheer awesome. I mean, it could look just like luck if you look at it, without looking at God. It's confusing as to why are they so successful? This doesn't make any sense at all. So we have the Jordanians hold Jerusalem, the eastern side of Jerusalem, which is the old city, pretty much where the temple is, where Jesus was crucified. They hold all of that, and the Jews own the western side. And the Syrians still own the Golan Heights, and Egypt owns most of the Sinai. So the Jews have a very tiny portion that they can exist in, but it is theirs, and they can exist in. And they get some support from around the world. I mean, America is very pro, but we're not like openly pro helping them very much. We don't really give them guns. We don't really give them ammunition. If it's any way, we do it in a very unilateral way. We don't want to look like we're openly helping them, because we don't want to make the Jordanian king unhappy. So eventually, from 1948 all the way up to 1966, there's a lot of conflict. There's some small battles. People die. But in general, Israel holds their own. But in 1967, finally, the Arabs found somebody they could get behind, and that was Nasser in Egypt. And he's going to be the man to lead them to push the Jew into the sea. So during this time period, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Syrians, Lebanese, they're all preparing. They're going to go back. They're going to go back, and they're going to finish the job. They're going to they're going to run the Jew off. So, and the Jews see this happening, and they're equipping and preparing all during this time period. So, why they're equipping and preparing, they notice they're equipping and preparing. Well, the Jordanian king decides to kind of push things a little bit, to kind of punish the Jew. He starts mortaring into the western side of Jerusalem. He starts shooting mortars in there. It's kind of random. Well, the Jews, they see this as a way, like, let's start the war. So they jump on it. So they take their planes, and they fly down into Egypt, and they take out the whole Egyptian Air Force, and then they go to Syria, and then they go to Jordan, and they go to Lebanon. Well, all these 5 or 4 really strong countries don't longer have air forces anymore. But they've got a lot of men. They have the majority men, but they don't have an air force to protect them. So the 1967, there's a 6-day war. It was a very short war because the Jews were so successful. They retake everything they wanted, even plus they take Jerusalem back, which was, they hadn't been there and they hadn't actually owned that for 2,000 years, and they got it back. Their center for worship, it was back in their hands now under Jewish authority. And they get back the Golan Heights, which is in the north where Syria is, and they get back the Sinai, they get back the Negev in the south from Egypt. And they just spank these countries. And the Arabs are so angry and disappointed and confused as to why they're not successful. Because it doesn't make sense. They outgun them. They outman them. And every time they lose, whoever that king was or whoever that dictator was, like I know Nasser was taking it, all of them eventually get assassinated, and somebody else gets put back in that really says, the main promise is, we're going to get rid of the Jew out of Palestine. This is a problem that we need to deal with now, So after 1967, we have a very strong Jewish army, and they're very confident, and they feel like they can now handle the Arab in any type of any fight. Well, in 1973, there's another war called the Yom Kippur War. And this war, and that Yom Kippur is a Day of Atonement in the Jewish festivals. It's in October. But during this time period, they usually stay home. They don't go outside. It's a quiet time of reflection and to prepare. And they get attacked by the Egyptians, and they get attacked by the Syrians, is mainly led both forces are mainly led by those two, Syrians and Egyptians. The Jordanians really don't want to get involved. They're not that interested. I mean, they kind of help out, but they're not interested in helping. Of course, the Lebanese help, and Iraq helps. So all these people, they attack. The Jews are kind of prideful. They feel like they've got this. Well, they finally see, because in the south it was about, I think it's like 80,000 Egyptians against about 500 Jews. They were not intimidated of the Arabs. They just feel like they could whip them anytime, any place. Well, they get attacked and they get pushed back. They lose most of the Sinai. They lose the Golan Heights. I mean, they're in trouble, big time trouble. And they start. I mean, things look like they're falling to pieces. Like this really will be the end of state of Israel. But then things start putting together. Suddenly, you'll hear about a tank commander by himself will take out 40 tanks. It really doesn't, mathematically, it doesn't make sense how they have success, but things start popping in the north. They retake the Golan Heights. And in the south, they surround the Egyptian army and start starving to death. Starving the Egyptian army, well, they cut them off from their supplies. And for the first time, the Egyptians actually send out an officer to the Israeli lines. And an officer gets out of the jeep and actually acknowledges the Israeli army. Before then, they don't even acknowledge them. They don't talk to them. They always talk to them through America or Russia or somebody else. Never publicly saying, hey, we acknowledge you as a country. It's always just a military force that's in Palestine in the West. And it's a big evil thing. We're not going to acknowledge it. But he actually says, hey, since you're only about 60 miles from Cairo and you can start bombing our capital, we would very much like to see if y'all will not do that. So they actually, and this really makes a lot of people very unhappy with the Egyptians. They actually go into very positive negotiations with the Jews because they finally see we ain't getting rid of them. They're not going anywhere. And I really can't remember that guy's name, but he is later assassinated for his activities with the Jews. And from 1973. And I just kind of stopped there because there's a lot of history. But these are the three main wars: 1948, the War for Independence; 67, the Six-Day War; and 73, the Yom Kippur War. These three main battles allow Israel to stand and show that they can fight a war and they can be successful. And this proves to the Arabs that they can't easily run them out. They're going to have to figure out a different way. So from 1973 to now, they've been picking at them slowly. And as you could see in Egypt right now, I mean, the rulers are going down. In Syria, they're having trouble. And most of these guys are not really nice guys. But what's weird about them is they don't really want to bother Israel right now. But they're all going down, like Mubarak, and I can't think of that Syrian guy. But they have a semi-positive relation with the Jews to the point where we're not really looking to attack them right now. But they're falling, and that's why a lot of some people think that maybe when these people fall and then their successors come in, these people will be far more militaristic and anti-Jew, and there could be something else. So what is the point of all this? I just talked about a whole bunch of history, and I made it very generalized. There's only been a Jewish state about 3 times, back with from Abraham to Jehoiakim. And then there's a Hasmonean period, but it's a very small 100-year period. And then right now we have a Jewish state that stands from 48 to right now. They have not had a lot of opportunity to rule themselves. And every time they have a state, things happen on the earth.
That's right.
Now, what will happen? I don't know. That's probably a more my dad kind of a question. But it's awesome to see what's happening right now and how it really doesn't make sense. They should not have a state. They should not exist because numerically they've never had it, but they always win. And it feels like it's leading up to something. Maybe nothing, but probably, I believe, something. And where, what that is, like I said, I'm not 100% sure, but things over there. I mean, do they love God? Do they love Jesus? No. Not at all. They don't acknowledge him. They don't even like saying his name. But they exist. It's so weird. Like, they have success, and they don't acknowledge who Jesus Christ is. They don't care one bit. Not interested. And it's just amazing to see these people that are so anti their hope, anti their Messiah, What are they? What is going on with them right now? What is God trying to do with these people? Because I know He wants them. I know He wants them back. You can read in Romans about how He's gonna bring His people back in. But it's just amazing to see their attitude, how they just don't acknowledge Him. But there are Christians coming there every day, acknowledging that Jesus Christ was here and He's a Messiah. I mean, my dad's probably told you about it when you go to Israel. Like where the Temple Mount sits, there's a gate called the Golden Gate, which I learned last night, which I thought was called the Lion Gate. Well, that was the gate Jesus entered in when He rode the camel in. And this is supposed to be the gate that the Messiah is going to come through. Well, the Jews, they rock that wall up so no one can walk through it anymore. And they're still waiting. Whoever the Messiah is, he's going to knock the rocks out of the way and walk through finally, when He finally gets here. They're waiting. They're waiting on their Messiah. They have a hope. But their hope is not the one hopefully everybody in here is hoping for. And it's just amazing because they acknowledge God. It is important to them. The law is still important to them. They've written many a commentary on the law that they follow nowadays since they have no fresh word from God. So they're still focused on, a Messiah, a hope. And it's just, I wish I could think of everything we saw and the Jews we talked to. I mean, even when they landed in 1948 and all these Jews were coming in, Hebrew was not a commonly spoken language. All these Jews spoke German, they spoke English, they spoke Russian. They didn't even have a common language, but they all knew this is where they needed to be. So they had to revive Hebrew so everybody had a common tongue. And they all had to learn it. I mean, I can't even imagine what that was like to live in, Italy for, 400 years. And then I'm in Israel and I had to learn Hebrew real quick and go fight on a battlefield somewhere. And, it's just amazing to see how they've traveled through time, and now here we are. And I really think something is about to happen. Maybe in the future, maybe now. I don't know, but something's going to pop. It's a very interesting history. It's very interesting what God wants for them. So that is a short, generalized view of Israel and where they are. This is more of a history lesson than really anything, spiritually significant. But it gets me excited a little bit to know that, God's doing something over there, and God's doing something more importantly, even for me here, and I get to see it. I get to see it right now. I get to live during a time period where things that seems like they only happen in the Bible are happening right in front of my eyes. And I think a lot of people don't even see it. Does anybody know? Do you remember 1948 when this happened? 67, 73? They happen kind of quietly, and it's not like huge news, and and even when it happens, and you do notice, it's forgotten pretty quickly. So, if you're a Christian and you're interested, I say look into it and see what part you play or what you should do, what your hope should be for this. So I finished really early, Daddy. So that's my history lesson for today. Mr. Gardenhire, do you want to do the